I should have seen it coming when my sister-in-law Claire insisted on planning my parents' 50th wedding anniversary party herself. At 46, I'd organized countless family gatherings over the years, but Claire had swooped in with her event planning business and her connections, promising something truly special for Mom and Dad. What I didn't expect was to be treated like an unwelcome guest at my own parents' celebration. "Margaret, I think there's been a misunderstanding," Claire said, her voice dripping with false sweetness as she approached me in the elegant ballroom of the Riverside Country Club. "The family table is reserved for immediate family only." She gestured toward the head table where my brother Robert sat with their teenage children, while I'd been seated at table 7, sandwiched between distant cousins and family friends. "I am immediate family," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm their daughter." Claire's smile never wavered, but her eyes went cold. "Of course, dear, but space is limited. And since Robert is the son who carries the family name, and I organized this entire event," she let the implication hang in the air like smoke. I looked around the beautifully decorated ballroom, the flowers I'd suggested, the photo displays I'd helped create, the guest list I'd provided, all orchestrated by Claire to somehow exclude me from my own parents' milestone celebration. My parents, bless them, were too overwhelmed by the attention to notice the subtle ways I was being marginalized. But my 20-year-old niece Emma was watching everything with sharp, angry eyes. The months leading up to this anniversary party had been a masterclass in passive-aggressive family politics. When Mom and Dad first mentioned wanting to celebrate their golden anniversary, I'd immediately started planning. I'd been the family organizer for decades, coordinating Christmas dinners, birthday parties, graduations. It was what I did, what I was good at. But Claire had other ideas. "Margaret, sweetie," she'd said during our first family meeting, "you've done so much over the years. Why don't you let me handle this one? I have professional experience after all." Her event planning business was barely 2 years old, built on her husband's connections and her own social climbing ambitions. I'd tried to collaborate, offering to help with the planning, sharing ideas I'd been collecting for months. But every suggestion was met with polite dismissal. "That's lovely, dear, but I think we need something more sophisticated. I appreciate the input, but I have a vision. Perhaps you could help with something smaller, like organizing the guest book." Slowly, I'd been relegated from planner to assistant, then from assistant to afterthought. Phone calls about the party happened without me. Decisions were made in group chats I wasn't included in. When I asked about details, I was told everything was under control and not to worry about it. The final insult had come when the invitations went out. Beautiful, expensive cards with elegant script that read, "Robert and Claire Thompson request the pleasure of your company." My parents' names were there, of course, but as honored guests rather than hosts. And my name was nowhere to be found, as if I didn't exist, as if I wasn't their daughter too. "It's just easier this way," Robert had explained when I confronted him. "Claire's handling everything, and you know how she gets when people interfere with her projects. Interfere." That's what my involvement in my own parents' anniversary had become: interference. I was the daughter who'd lived in the same city for 20 years, who visited every Sunday, who'd helped them through Dad's heart surgery and Mom's broken hip. But somehow, I was interfering with Claire's vision of the perfect family celebration. The party was everything Claire had promised: elegant, sophisticated, and completely devoid of the warmth that characterized our family gatherings. The country club ballroom gleamed with crystal and silver, the flowers were perfectly arranged, and the guests were appropriately impressed. But it felt like a performance rather than a celebration. I watched from table 7 as Claire glided through the crowd, accepting compliments on the beautiful event, basking in the praise for her organizational skills. She'd positioned herself as the gracious hostess, the devoted daughter-in-law who'd made this magical evening possible. Meanwhile, I felt like a stranger at my own parents' party. "This is ridiculous," Emma whispered as she slipped into the empty chair beside me. My niece had apparently abandoned her assigned seat at the family table to join me in exile. "Mom's acting like she's the only one who cares about Grandma and Grandpa. It's fine." I lied, trying to maintain the family peace I'd been keeping for decades. "The important thing is that your grandparents are happy," but Emma wasn't buying it. At 20, She had the clarity that comes with not yet learning to swallow injustice for the sake of harmony. It's not fine, Aunt Maggie. You're the one who's been taking care of them for years. You're the one who knows all their friends, who remembers their stories, who actually listens when they talk. She was right, of course. While Robert and Claire lived their busy lives in the suburbs, visiting on holidays and special occasions, I was the one who'd been present for the daily realities of my parents' aging. I knew Dad's doctors by name, had Mom's medication schedule memorized, understood their fears and hopes in ways that couldn't be captured in a beautifully planned party. The evening's program began with Robert taking the microphone to give a toast. He spoke eloquently about love and commitment, about the example our parents had set, about family legacy. It was a beautiful speech, well delivered and heartfelt. But as he spoke about family bonds and shared memories, I felt increasingly invisible, as if my own relationship with our parents was somehow less significant than his. When he finished, the applause was warm and genuine. Claire beamed with pride, her event planning triumph complete. Sitting at that distant table, watching my brother bask in applause while I remained invisible, I felt every year of being the good daughter weighing on my shoulders. The daughter who never caused trouble, who always put family harmony above her own needs, who'd spend decades making herself smaller to avoid conflict. I thought about all the times I'd bitten my tongue when Robert got credit for things I'd done. The family vacation I'd planned that became Robert's great idea. The Christmas traditions I'd maintained that were somehow attributed to the family in general. The countless ways I'd been erased from our family narrative, not through malice but through the casual assumption that the son's contributions mattered more than the daughter's. Emma was watching me with concern, her young face fierce with indignation on my behalf. "You should say something," she whispered. "You should get up there and tell everyone what you've really done for them." But the thought terrified me. I'd spent so long avoiding confrontation, so many years being the peacekeeper, that the idea of standing up and demanding recognition felt impossible. What if I made a scene? What if I ruined my parents' special night? What if everyone thought I was being petty or jealous? "I can't," I whispered back. "It's not my place." "Not your place?" Emma's voice rose slightly, causing a few people at nearby tables to glance our way. "You're their daughter. You've been their daughter longer than Mom's been their daughter-in-law. How is it not your place?" The question hit me like a physical blow because I couldn't answer it. When had I decided that my place was in the background? When had I accepted that my love and devotion were somehow less worthy of recognition than Robert's sporadic attention and Claire's professional event planning? I watched my parents at the head table, surrounded by the family and friends I'd helped gather, celebrating a milestone I'd wanted to honor, in a setting that felt nothing like the intimate, love-filled gatherings I would have created. They looked happy, but also a little overwhelmed, a little lost in all the formal elegance. This wasn't the celebration they would have chosen. It was the celebration Claire thought they deserved. The evening continued with its carefully orchestrated program. There were more speeches from family friends, a slideshow presentation that Claire had assembled using photos I'd provided but receiving no credit for, and a formal dinner that felt more like a corporate event than a family celebration. I tried to participate, to smile and applaud at the appropriate moments, but I felt increasingly disconnected from the proceedings. This was supposed to be about my parents, about celebrating their love story, their journey together. Instead, it had become a showcase for Claire's event planning skills and Robert's position as the family patriarch. The breaking point came during the gift presentation. Claire had organized an elaborate ceremony where various family members presented their gifts to my parents. Robert and Claire went first, presenting an expensive crystal vase that would look beautiful but had no personal meaning. Other relatives followed with their offerings, each presentation announced with fanfare. When it came time for my gift, there was no announcement. I simply walked up to the head table during a lull in the program and quietly handed my parents the photo album I'd spent months creating, a collection of pictures spanning their entire relationship, with handwritten notes about the memories each one represented. "Oh, Margaret," Mom said, tears filling her eyes as she flipped through the pages. "This is beautiful. Look, Harold, here's our first apartment, and here's you teaching the kids to ride bikes." But the moment was brief. overshadowed by Claire quickly moving the program along to the next scheduled event. My gift, the one that had taken months of careful curation and love, was dismissed as quickly as it had been presented. Emma had been watching all of this with growing anger. I could see her jaw clenching, her hands balling into fists. When Claire took the microphone again to announce the dancing portion of the evening, Emma suddenly stood up. "This is bullshit," she said, loud enough for our table to hear but not quite loud enough to disrupt the program. "Emma, please," I whispered, mortified. "Don't make a scene." But my niece was done being quiet. She'd inherited the family tendency toward justice, but unlike me, she hadn't yet learned to suppress it for the sake of keeping peace. "No, Aunt Maggie," she said, her voice growing stronger. "Someone needs to say what everyone's thinking." Before I could stop her, she was walking toward the front of the room, her young face set with determination. What happened next would become family legend, talked about for years to come. Emma walked straight to the front of the ballroom, her 20-year-old confidence cutting through the formal atmosphere like a knife through silk. Claire was still holding the microphone, about to introduce the band, when Emma gently but firmly took it from her hands. "Excuse me," Emma said, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "I have something to say." The ballroom fell silent. All eyes turned to this young woman who'd just interrupted the carefully planned program. Claire's face went white with shock, then red with anger. Robert half stood from his chair, clearly debating whether to intervene. "I want to talk about my Aunt Margaret," Emma announced, her voice steady and clear. "The woman sitting at table 7, the one who's been invisible all evening." My heart stopped. Every instinct told me to get up, to stop her, to prevent the scene I'd been avoiding my entire life. But something kept me frozen in my chair, maybe curiosity, maybe hope, maybe just exhaustion from decades of self-erasure. "You see," Emma continued, turning to address the entire room, "while everyone's been congratulating my mom on this beautiful party, I think you should know who really made tonight possible." She pointed directly at me, and suddenly every eye in the ballroom was focused on my table. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like a deer caught in headlights. But Emma wasn't finished. "Aunt Margaret is the one who visits my grandparents every Sunday. She's the one who drove them to every doctor's appointment when Grandpa had his heart surgery. She's the one who organized their medications, who helped them navigate insurance paperwork, who held Grandma's hand during every scary moment." The room was completely silent now. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving, sensing they were witnessing something extraordinary. "She's the one who collected all the photos for tonight's slideshow." Emma's voice grew stronger with each revelation. "She's the one who provided the guest list, who knew which friends to invite and which stories to tell. She's the one who's been preserving our family history while the rest of us got busy with our own lives." I could see my parents at the head table, their faces reflecting dawning realization. Mom's hand was pressed to her heart, tears streaming down her cheeks. Dad was nodding slowly, as if pieces of a puzzle were finally falling into place. "And yet," Emma continued, her young voice ringing with righteous indignation, "she's been sitting at table 7 all night, treated like a distant relative instead of the daughter who's devoted her life to caring for this family." Claire tried to interrupt, reaching for the microphone, but Emma stepped away, her message not yet complete. "So before we start dancing, before we wrap up this beautiful evening that my mom planned so perfectly," Emma's voice carried a note of loving sarcasm that made several guests smile, "I want everyone to know something." She turned to look directly at me, her eyes bright with love and determination. "Aunt Margaret, you're not just a guest at this party. You're not just another family member. You're the heart of this family, the one who holds us all together, the one who makes sure love is more than just a word we say on special occasions." The silence stretched for a heartbeat. Then Emma delivered the words that would change everything. "She's the one we really came to see." The standing ovation that followed was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It started with my parents, who rose from their chairs with tears streaming down their faces, applauding not just Emma's words but the truth she'd spoken. Then table by table, the entire ballroom rose to their feet, clapping not just for the speech but for the recognition of something they'd all witnessed but hadn't known how to name. I sat there overwhelmed, as 3 generations of family and friends acknowledged what I'd never dared to claim for myself, that my quiet, consistent love had been the foundation that made celebrations like this possible. Claire stood frozen at the front of the room. Her perfect event suddenly transformed into something she hadn't planned but couldn't control. Robert looked stunned, perhaps realizing for the first time how his sister had been marginalized in her own family. But it was my parents' reaction that mattered most. Dad made his way over to my table, his steps slow but determined, and pulled me into a hug that felt like coming home. "Maggie," he whispered, using the childhood nickname he hadn't called me in years, "I'm so sorry we let you become invisible. You've been our anchor all these years, and we forgot to tell you." Mom joined us, her makeup ruined by tears but her smile radiant. "Emma's right," she said simply. "You are the one we came to see. You always have been." The rest of the evening transformed into something Claire never could have planned, a genuine celebration where love mattered more than logistics, where recognition was given to those who'd earned it through devotion rather than organization. Emma found me during the dancing, grinning with the satisfaction of someone who'd just righted a long-standing wrong. "I couldn't let them erase you anymore, Aunt Maggie," she said. "Someone had to say what we were all thinking." That night, I learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to disappear, especially when everyone expects you to fade into the background. And sometimes, it takes someone who loves you to remind the world that you were never meant to be invisible. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family or overlooked despite your countless contributions, remember this: your love and devotion have value that goes beyond recognition. But you also deserve to be seen, acknowledged, and celebrated for all you do. Share this story with someone who needs to remember their own worth today. Subscribe for more stories about women who refuse to be erased, who find their voices through the love of those who truly see them. Because every woman who quietly holds her family together deserves to have someone stand up and say, "She's the one we came to see." Sometimes the most powerful moment in our lives is when someone else refuses to let us remain invisible.